Welcome back to the channel, guys. I don't know if I really explained this in the last video. It kind of ended with me driving the E30 on the road, but I ended up having the individual throttle bodies stick wide open, and it had this problem where the Heim joints, when they got hot, they expanded and they completely seized up. So today I'm going to try and rectify that by replacing these Heim joints here, and then there's these ball joints that had a lot of play in them. And if you guys know anything about ITBs, is that if you have any kind of slop in any of the linkages, even if it's just a tiny bit, it's going to throw off the sync across all the throttle bodies. And even like a 0.01 inch variance across the cylinders is going to throw the entire chain off. So I'm going to try to rectify that and see what happens. Hopefully by the end of the video I can drive it on the street more safely without the throttle sticking open. So if you're ever looking for super hard to find hardware, check out McMaster Car. They have an app even, and they have all kinds of various hardware. So these old Heim joints here, I was able to get brand new ones and measure the ones that I had. So we're gonna throw these on first. These held on this bar that twisted with the throttle cable. And this is the main part that got seized up. So these right now, I can't even turn this right now. So hopefully these new ones will fix that problem. Just want to take a brief second here to just ask if you guys could subscribe or even comment on some of my videos. It'd be super helpful. Just trying to grow the channel. My goal is to get just to maybe like 1,000, 1,500 subscribers. Nothing crazy, but I do put a lot of effort into these videos, and it does take a lot of time to edit and film. So I appreciate your support, guys. And in addition to that, if you guys want to see something different on the channel, anything I can improve on, or anything you really like or don't like, I can make specific videos for those things or do less of other topics. So just let me know in the comments. Thanks. So I did end up getting the new linkages on and these Heim joints here. Things do seem to move a lot more freely. So hopefully when things come up to temp here, it won't seize up like it did before. I do need to adjust some of these a little bit. I noticed that these two cylinders here are a little bit more open than these others. This linkage here actuates these four, and then this one over here actually just actuates these two. So again, I just need to make sure all of these are in sync. The other thing is I do have a vacuum gauge. So each one of these cylinders has a vacuum port here. So I'm going to be going across all of them with the vacuum gauge, getting a reading, and then adjusting each one of these screws to make sure that they have equal vacuum across all the cylinders. That way they're better in sync. I don't know if you've ever worked with motorcycle carburetors or ITBs on motorcycles, but it works generally the same way to get them in sync. The other thing I noticed when I was running the car is this E-fan wasn't working. The previous owner looks like he installed some relays here for high and low temp to kick on for the fan. So something there has gone missing or rats chewed. There is this power cable that's not hooked up to anything, so I'm sure that doesn't help. If you guys are ever getting into car electrical stuff, it's great to learn how relays work. It's basically a switch, a glorified switch, and it actually handles more load than an actual physical switch. These have coils inside, and when you have a trigger power to them, the coil moves to the other side and makes the connection for the big amperage to come across. And it's a lot safer and can handle amps for, you know, big things like fuel pumps and fans and anything that's like electrically demanding. So here's a quick tip. If you're like me and you absolutely hate soldering wires, I found a really good solution. It makes really strong connections, and it actually still has solder. So you buy these, they call them solder and seal wire connectors, and what they have is a little bit of solder in the middle, and then those two bands on the side, when you apply heat to them, they shrink down and make a watertight connection. So I'll put the two wires in and hit it with a heat gun, and it actually solders the wires together and puts shrink wrap around it. And if it's a super critical connection, I'll also add some of this heat shrink wrap over the top of that once the connection's made. So these you can also probably buy on Amazon too. They come in the shorter ones. You could buy like a roll of these, but I prefer like the pre-cut ones. And then depending on what gauge wire you have, and the more you work with this stuff, the more you'll be able to just look at a wire and see what gauge it is. But basically the different colors mean different gauge wires and what they're rated for. So you can see here, like yellow is rated for 10 to 12 gauge, things like that. So just make sure, like right now I'm using the blue one. I'm gonna use blue heat shrink, and then everything should work together properly. After almost an hour of troubleshooting, I finally figured out what was wrong with the fans. The power supply going to these relays was actually connected to, this is the power distribution block on E30s. It's got two sides to it. So this is the side going to the battery, so constant 12 volts. And this side is actually switched from the ignition, so it only turns on with ignition power. So originally my fan supply was hooked to this one, and apparently it didn't have enough amperage to handle the high draw fan. So I actually switched it to the constant 12 volt side of the battery, because I was like, what the heck is going on? I'm getting 12 volts, but it's not actually turning the fan on. So now when I try to supply power, I'm just like simulating the thermal switch kicking on. Turns on now. So one problem solved. Okay, so on to the next problem. The blue plug on E30s, there's two temp sensors in the front of the motor. The blue one actually runs to the ECU, and for the stock ECU, tells it how much fuel to add based on engine temperature. It's sort of like an additive multiplier. So mine wasn't working, and I had started from reading the resistance on the sensor itself, and I started tracing all the way back, all the way to the ECU plug inside, and I found that the resistance on the plug was good for the temperature I was at. And I came down, so it actually runs through this harness here, comes through where this plug is. This is called the C191 plug. And I found that when I took it off, it was actually corroded. So I had them soaking in vinegar all day, and then I'm going to use a wire brush to hopefully clean up the contacts. And then I'm going to go back inside and hopefully get the same resistance reading on my multimeter. Okay, so next step is I'm going to try to tune this thing again, and we're actually getting a coolant temp reading, but now it says 28 degrees Fahrenheit and it's like 70 something degrees outside, so that's not correct. I'm hoping that it's just out of range of the sensor itself on this old BMW, but we'll see. And I actually calibrated the wideband sensor, and these have a cool feature where it will actually display two values, and based on that, based on what it's reading, there's a calibration factor. So they actually provide a spreadsheet where you plug in some values, what you see, and there's a little correction factor. Sometimes if there's a variance in your grounding wires and stuff like that, it can make the wideband signal inaccurate. So this actually compensates for that. And then there's settings in the Megasquirt that you would plug in for that. So that's kind of cool. So you guys are actually about to see the first, I think, cold start on video with it tuned. So hopefully it starts up correctly. So here's my fuel pump. Let's see what we got here. Nice. Perfect. It's actually running really well. Warm-up enrichment, I think I need to fix up here. It's pretty lean, so. Auto-tune is doing its thing. Train wreck. It really is.
Oh no, why?
It just doesn't feel good at all. Nothing feels good about the car. Just a mess. I don't know. I don't even know where to start, to be honest.
What's going on? Talk me through it.
Just the suspension. It just doesn't ride very good. It's super rough. I mean, it's probably the tires being old too, but there's like a dead spot in the beginning of the pedal when you tip in, and that's usually like acceleration enrichment, and I try to add a bunch of fuel, but it still has this like weird hesitation, and then it goes. It's almost like turbo lag, but there's no turbo. And it also feels super slow. I don't know if there's like a lot of timing in it, or maybe just still on the rich side or lean side. It was still doing the auto tune there, so I don't know. It's just a lot of work to do. So for the auto tune here, it'll tell you what cells were changed. So red are the areas that added fuel, and blue are the cells that it took away fuel, and you can see it on the V table here. So just that drive alone, I got a pretty good portion of the map, and it did its thing. There's also some settings here. Cell change resistance, you can set it to how easy you want the ECU to be able to change the values. So if you have it fairly dialed in and you just need like a quick sort of like tune up, I guess, or change small values, you would change the resistance to harder. So
Oh, There we go. Look at that
Yeah.
wiggle.
Wiring harness is just trashed.